We got a big one for you today. We're going to be joined by the old man himself, Bill Hoskinson, to talk about his new Plates and 28s event coming up in a couple of weeks at Edgewater Dragway. And we've got a whole bunch of other special guests, including John Sears. We're going to talk a little bit about the Drag Illustrated Winter Series. Guys, let's do this thing. Listen, I've never had any problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way. Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do. I respect the history, I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. The biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing. Prove me wrong. I'll wait. Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. Somehow, some way, it's almost Halloween, friends. Hard to believe. We got a hell of a show for you guys today. I'm very excited about this. This old boy and I have texted a bunch and gone back and forth a little bit, but we've only recently really started to have in-depth conversations. I'm excited to have one with you guys here today. Remember, check in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. And as always, make sure you join this community here. Click subscribe, follow along with what we're doing so you get all the updates via our Drag Illustrated YouTube channel and, of course, all across social media and wherever podcasts are sold here in 2024. Again, we got a ton of stuff to cover today. We're fresh off a huge weekend at the Texas Motorplex. I got to spend 2 or 3 days out there with all my drag racing brethren. Man, I can't say enough about the incredible job that the whole team at the Texas Motorplex does. And I want to take a second here just to tip my cap to them. There's, for a time in our sport, there's so much going on in our sport. But I will tell you, there are some like real beacons of hope, real beacons of optimism and things that I think show the sport of drag racing is on the correct trajectory. And the Stampede of Speed down here in Dallas, Texas, is at the tippy top of that list as far as events that I really think are presenting our sport in the right way. And that's one of the things that we're going to dive into today with Bill Hoskinson, is just talking about how so much of what we do is the on-track product is absolutely fantastic. I've told you guys this many times before, but I feel drag racing has no rival when it comes to the actual on-track product. Where we oftentimes have lagged behind in the in the grand motorsports scheme or the entire stick and ball sports world, is we've lagged behind a little bit in terms of production and pomp and circumstance. You guys know me. I love big champagne bottles and backdrops and flags and banners and all those things. And at times they seem silly, right? You think about it's money you shouldn't spend, and you certainly could spend it somewhere else, whatever. But creating an atmosphere, it's what every restaurant's trying to do. It's what every bar is trying to do. It's what every church is trying to do. You're trying to create an atmosphere. And I think that the Texas Motorplex, the entire team, and it starts with Billy and Christy Meyer, Barry, the leadership team there, but trickles on down to Tara and DeMarcus and Eric Cheeseburger, as we all know and love him. This whole team, Terry, all these guys, TJ, handling track prep duties, the whole team, Laney, this whole group at the Texas Motorplex really are doing a tremendous service to the sport of drag racing. And I just want to thank them for an incredible week-long event at the Motorplex. Just incredible to see that kind of humanity. I mean, they had big-name country music acts, all sorts of insane things happening, and I was just overwhelmingly excited and proud of what it represented. But before I get any further along here, because I could totally, rap on this for quite a while, let me introduce my cohorts here on the Wes Buck Show, the one, the only JT Hudson, and my boy Mike Carpenter. What's up, guys?
Yo, what's going on?
It's been one of those days, man. I've been on the phone since I opened my eyes this morning.
That's just every day, right?
It really is, man. It's that's what it takes, man. I think that communication is another thing that our sport has kind of, it's weird. There's a lot of communication amongst racers. There's a lot of communications amongst promoters and sanctions and series, but it seems like it in the past that we haven't really joined those forces as well as maybe we should have. And that's something that I feel like we've really driven the bus on, is kind of tearing some of these walls down and recognizing that we can accomplish a lot more together than we can apart. I mean, that's one of the things I want to touch on with Bill, is just that how many great things are happening in the sport right now. And it's across the spectrum. I mean, it's from the NHRA and the national event scene to the PDRA. Of course, all these streetcar small tire things going on. We did have some bad news, and we're going to have to touch on that because we missed last week's show with everybody contending with the weather and the various hurricanes. And I do want to send our well wishes to everybody that's still fighting the good fight, in many cases fighting for survival, a place to lay their head at night. And our hearts and prayers are with all those people. Our beloved Bradenton Motorsports Park took a little beating during this last storm, but fortunately not too terribly bad. Vic and the gang are down there doing repairs this week and making progress.
They've been doing a good job, like keeping us up to date. And I like how they're, producing these videos and showing us some of the repairs going on, and giving everybody hope that maybe they'll be racing like even as soon as this weekend, possibly.
Quite possibly. If power is restored on time, I do believe they'll be back in action very, very, very soon. Which is
not surprising. But yeah, it's time, man. It's been kind of one of those, like the summer drags on a little bit, and then we get into the fall. The schedule is just packed. The weather's turning nice. It's cool here. I know it's cool there in Missouri, even getting cold in Texas a little bit. So it's time to get after it here in the fall.
It's record setting season, baby. I'm excited. This is the best time to go drag racing.
Yeah.
When you can wear a hoodie.
I didn't even know that he owned a hoodie. I mean, really.
I have a couple. Just bring them with me to Indy. That's it.
Yeah, that's the only place he's really got to wear them.
He does. He has like a jacket, scarf, gloves, everything. It's just like his Indy pack.
That's when
the only time he gets to use it.
When we used to have to trek, all the way down, Washington Avenue downtown to go to dinner, man, that was a cold walk. Some
and you never know what the weather's going to be.
Coming home at 3 a.m.
Yeah, we've done that a couple times too.
Yeah, that happens, man. That happens. Well, hey guys, I want to take a quick second here before we bring on our first guest of the show, and just take a second to remind you that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by way of our friends at Stroud Safety. Stroud Safety is known for their top quality racing safety equipment, from drag chutes and seatbelts to fire suits and blankets, all 100% made in America. Log on to StroudSafety.com and make sure you tell them we sent you. Guys, without any further ado, excited to have him on the show. Like I said, we've been talking about this going back and forth for a while, and last week with the weather, we missed the opportunity, but we were able to put things together to bring on the man of the hour, Bill Hoskinson, the old man himself, and we're going to talk a little bit about plates and 28s, his new event, all these different things that are going on in the sport of drag racing. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the man, Bill Hoskinson. What up, buddy?
How's it going, guys? Thank you for having me.
No, thanks for joining us, man. What a deal. I mean, I guess where I would like to start with this is, for those that don't know, we talked about this a little bit on the phone yesterday, Bill, that we have kind of different audiences. I mean, we speak to a very hardcore, like drag race specific, purpose-built cars,
yes.
A lot of that type of stuff. But we recognize that a lot of the movement that's happening in our sport and a lot of the most exciting things that are going on today are kind of on the fringe. The no prep small tire stuff, the back of the track stuff, the drag and drive stuff, all these different types of events that are really rooted in grassroots drag racing. Can you kind of just introduce yourself to our audience and kind of how this thing came to be? I mean,
sure.
You're now one of the best known automotive YouTubers that exist, along with your son, but a massive following, and you've turned this into a business, something of an empire. And I would love to just know a little bit about how this whole thing came to be. I mean, when did you shoot your first video? How did this all start?
So this all started, I'll try and keep this as short as possible, but this all started with a local street racing private page here in Central Ohio. And my son got invited to bring his little S10 pickup truck out to a Mexican soiree, let's say. And it changed my life. It really did, because I have never been a street racer. This was something my oldest son watched on 1320 video and in study hall at high school, and he would come home and show me videos and talk about this and talk about that, and he was so passionate about it. And I thought, well, Okay, we'll do it. If you want to do it, I'm in. And so I went street racing with my son one night, and I had more fun street racing with my son than I have ever had in my life at any bracket race. And that
That's
was
awesome.
it. I mean, we were just from that night on, that's all we could think about. Like, we worked together every day. We had a family owned excavating business, and my son and I worked together every day and all day long. If we were in the dump truck together going someplace, that's all we were talking about was um, who's doing what on the street and who we could pick off, or who's slipping right now. We thought we could make a call out on somebody right now while they're slipping a little bit, and it was just so much fun, and I dearly enjoyed it. And so he ended up starting his own YouTube channel, and being a young man, he was a teenager at the time. um, he was more into taking pretty girls for ride-alongs and things like that, and I could see it was taking off, but I felt like there was a lot of uh, content that was not being filmed in the shop, the day-to-day things, and maybe young man, 19, 18 years old, he didn't really feel like that was something anybody wanted to see. His age group, or his followers probably wasn't more interested in that than they were pretty girls doing ride-alongs. So I decided to start my own channel to film some of that. And the God's honest truth, Wes, is that when I started my channel, I was still driving a dump truck and I was still doing excavating, and I had taken a piece of paper out and written down all my expenses, and I said, if I can just make $800 a week on YouTube, I'll cancel the insurance on my dump truck, and I'll help my kids. And that's all I ever really wanted to do. Um, YouTube was never an option that I thought would be viable for me. Um, I never, I never expected my channel to take off the way it did. I had no idea how to edit videos. I've had to teach myself pretty much all of it. And I don't know, man. It's just, that's how it got started. And I'm very
It's
thankful.
I
That's
mean,
an
did
awesome story.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is almost incredible because I mean, you're over like 160,000 subscribers the last time I checked. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a massive community of people, Bill. And I think that in this day and age of everybody throwing around millions of this and million followers that or whatever, you fail to kind of appreciate to the level maybe that we should the significance of 160,000 people. I mean, that is a city. I mean,
Yeah.
it's 10 times the size of the city that I was born and raised and grew up in.
And
So
it kind of did took a different path too. Like we were talking in the green room, and your explanation there kind of laid it out as well. It's not about flash and everything like Wes said, or cutting up and acting crazy. It's really genuine, and I think
Yeah.
that is caught on with a different demographic, or it's refreshing to see that. I mean, when you pull up YouTube or you pull up any social media, it's just the stupidity can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
So
And I'm not knocking
it's like a
anybody for
different
that.
realm.
Mike's
Obviously
talking about Jimmy Dale.
Yeah, I am
Jimmy Dale's
talking about Jimmy
obvious.
Dale specifically there.
Get him,
yeah.
get him, Tom.
So, obviously my son's YouTube channel is street racing channel. Clearly that's an illegal activity. And as a father and as a small businessman, I identified very early on that my son was not intent on digging ditches with me anymore. And the kids are going to go do their own thing. There was no question. So, and I was looking at this from a standpoint of a small business owner. What is feasible? Like, I don't think in any way, shape, or form you're going to be able to film illegal street racing enough every single week to put a video out and make that something that you can do full time, at least long term. You know what I mean? So um, I really can't say that I did this intentionally, but it just kind of happened that um, as my son's channel was taking off with a certain demographic, mine started to take off with a little bit different demographic. But my channel, I think, has been mostly successful in introducing my family, and our core group of friends that help us on a regular. My wife's texting me. Do you need anything before you start the live? I'm already live.
She said,
But you
tell
hit
her
on
that
everybody
you shaved.
though.
You
like
shaved this morning. Like
check
Yeah,
all
she
those.
got me to shave this
You
morning.
check all those boxes, for everybody, so they can relate to somebody that's following you and someone in your family. I think it's very important.
Yeah. So, moving forward now, obviously the kids realize that, Billy's got a son now. Billy's a father now. So he realizes now that this family aspect is a lot more important than maybe what he thought when he was 17, 18, 19 years old.
Understandable, right?
Are you saying the
Yeah.
hot girl ride-alongs? So
Yeah.
It helped out in that situation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Text your wife back and ask her for more hot girls.
Well, real quick, and I don't mean to interject this, but I think that this is
Sure.
like an interesting thing, is that Jimmy Dale, longtime friend of the show, Tom Gunner, he literally just put in the comments right now, without old man, there wouldn't be a Jimmy Dale. So you blame him for this. And I'm just curious, like, what do you make of that? Like, what was that conversation like? I mean, do you remember, Bill, like whenever you told him that maybe you should pursue this? Because I think that this is, I want you to tell this story, but I want our audience and all of y'all following along, I want you to act as if Bill's talking to you, because this is something we talk about here a lot and in Drag Illustrated for the last couple of decades, is how badly our sport needs more racers to put themselves out there. The days of, sponsorships is a great example. I mean, the days of putting a big logo on the side of a car and getting paid a bunch of money to do it have long since passed. These things are much more nuanced now. And a lot of it is rooted in personal brands. They want to connect to a person. And the coolest part about it is you guys have worked on 100 different cars. I mean, I'm sure you've had ones that people are especially fond of, but there's been all sorts of different cars. And to me, that kind of tells the story, is that people have fallen in love with Billy and Bill and these people and what they're driving. Sure, they may have a preference, or they like the S10 better than Nova or whatever, but it's really about you guys. So what was that conversation like with Jimmy Dale when you convinced him to put himself out there and start his YouTube channel?
So Jimmy somehow got himself rooted in Nitrous Express. And one of the very first things that Jimmy did after he got brought on board at Nitrous Express was he went down to, I think it was Galen's track. What's Galen's track?
XRP, Extreme Race Park. Yep.
Yeah. So Billy and Tony and Tess were all at a radial race down at XRP, and it was literally the day before the race, they brought Jimmy Dale in and brought him on as a outside sales guy or something. And the very first thing Jimmy did was he drove straight down to XRP and introduced himself to Billy and said, "Hey, I'm with Nitrous Express. If there's anything we can ever do for you, I'd like to start a relationship with you guys. If there's anything you need." And it didn't take long. I had my Malibu and we were talking about putting nitrous on it. And Billy's like, "Well, call this guy. He's kind of crazy, but just call him." I said, "Well, what's this guy like?" He's like, you just got to freaking deal with this guy, Dad. I'm telling you, he's different." And so when Jimmy first texted me, it was through text, and he was a green bubble at the time.
That's a red flag.
That's a red flag. So Jimmy sends me a text message, and he's very polite, very articulate, very professional. And the response I sent back was anything but professional. And I figured I'm gonna break this guy in, because if we can't joke around, I'm not dealing with him. And I can't tell you what I texted him, but he shot me instantly right back, and he was giving it right back to me as hard as I gave it to him. I'm like, okay, I can deal with this guy. And so Jimmy got started, working for Nitrous Express and doing some advertising and doing all the things that he does at Nitrous Express. But eventually, Jimmy's main job was, something that I'm not really in favor of, but he was honest with me up front. And that's the main thing about Jimmy that I don't want to say too much about it. He was into something that he would rather not be doing. And, but he would never, ever lied to me. And I don't think anybody that knows me knows where I stand on things. I mean, I'm pretty open. And, so he had every opportunity to lie to me, and he never did. He just, hey, I'm just going to be upfront with you, you know, this. And I said, man, if you want to get out of that lifestyle, if you want to do something better, if you want to do something different, I'll help you. And he's like, well, I don't know what to do. I said, dude, you're so funny. Start a YouTube channel. Oh my God. Are you serious? I don't know how many months it took for me to talk him into this, maybe weeks or so, but I literally told him, I said, every day that you don't focus on building your brand, the Jimmy Dale brand, every day you don't focus on that and release some kind of content, I said, Tom, it's like taking $500 and lighting it on fire. And that really got his attention. And, you know, I helped him as much as I could, but listen, this is all him. Jimmy is his own man. I mean, he's done his own work. He's put the work in. Sometimes he drug his feet a little bit and didn't like it. You know, you have that, but look where he's at now. I mean, my God, look what he's doing for Small Tire Gangsters. If you would have told me 2 years ago, or maybe even a year and a half ago, that some goofy guy from Texas would make 530 index racing acceptable and cool and sexy and something that people would actually not ridicule you for on the internet, I would have said you're nuts. Oh, that's bracket racing. That's this and that's, but look what he's done with it. Look what he's done with it.
It's absolutely incredible. And there's so many different directions we could go with this. I've got a lot that I want to touch on. I guess while we'll stay on topic, I'll do my best here. I'm bad about this, Bill. I know.
This is going to be like herding cats.
It's okay. We'll do our level best, friends. But how much of a challenge was it? Because this seems like very natural to you. And I'm just curious, like, where that comes from, because you tell a story about, you know, driving a dump truck for a living. And I'm just wondering, like, what do you think in your past, like, prepared you or gave you whatever sort of background or training is probably not the right word, but prepared you for like a life that's pretty front and center? I mean, you're a public figure at this point in time. You put yourself out there consistently. And I'm honestly asking this question even for myself, because I feel like I might as well say this here, is that, you know, despite us doing this show essentially every week for, I don't know, almost 10 years, it seems like. I think this is almost our 400th episode or something. I still struggle to put myself out there, and I still struggle to make that post or to say that thing. And I'm just curious, was that something you developed over time, Bill? Or
I think the honest answer there is right out of high school, my very first job was working for a small village where I grew up, and my grandparents and aunts and uncles all lived on my mom's side of the family. And it was a part-time job and a seasonal job at that. In fact, it was this time of year. It was leaf season. My dad was the superintendent for the Village of Pataskala's street department. And every year during the fall, they would provide leaf service where they would pick up leaves. And my dad needed to hire someone to help run the leaf machine where you just suck up the leaves on the curb. And the lady in the office that run the office up there asked Dad if he thought that his oldest son would be interested in helping him with leaves. And he said, well, I'll ask him. So I said, yeah, I don't care. That sounds good. I'll get to go to work every day with my dad. You know, I'm in. So I started working there part-time as a seasonal employee. And then he had one other full-time employee there at the time. And that guy didn't want to do leaf season. He did it last year and he wasn't going to do it again. So he ended up quitting right before we started. So it was just me and Dad that entire winter. And we plowed snow and put salt down and fixed road signs and that kind of thing. And so after the winter was over, they asked if I'd like to stay on because they hadn't found anybody else. And so I stayed on there for, I don't know, 15 years or so. And so what I learned, and I say all this to get to your point, where did you learn to put yourself out there? Well, when you work for a small community and your dad's your boss, everything I do is under a microscope, because anything I do wrong, even remotely wrong, my dad's going to know about it instantly, because everybody in town's watching. You know, if you didn't quite stop at a stop sign, or a shovel fell off the truck on Main Street and it's laying out here, you know, oh my God. And the firemen were the worst. Oh my Lord, those guys, gee, many Christmas. But they really, I mean, that, I guess that probably is what gave
So
me,
like that early experience dealing with the
yeah,
public. I mean,
or
yeah,
just knowing that you're being watched at all times.
yes,
And so
at
having
all
to,
times, and
you know,
everything's
build
under a
your,
microscope.
yeah, build your persona, like how you're going to carry yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like, have you, as you've developed your YouTube channel and seeing what Billy's done with SRC, like how has this evolved? Like from early on, like take us through some of the things that have changed, or, you know, from early days of filming videos. From what I understand, you're still editing stuff yourself
Yeah.
to this day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how has this evolved?
You know, when I first started my channel, I was very reluctant. I was very uncomfortable on camera. I felt stupid. I felt like it was ridiculous. You know, things that I watched my kids do that I'd always laugh and snicker while I continued to run equipment and run the dump truck and stuff like that. You know, it was kind of funny at the time to me, and now you know, I find myself now having to do those things. And, you know, one of the challenges of starting my channel was that I film everything myself and I edit everything myself. And inevitably, if you've ever tried to film anything, you know that as you film things that are not scripted as they happen, the audio is inevitably going to be screwed up in 90% of it. Either a plane's flying over, a dump truck comes by, the trash truck comes by, the dogs are barking, an air compressor kicks on while you're trying to talk. And so what I found was, what worked best for me is, since my audio is always screwed up, I would just put music, background music, and the background music, I would pick the music that fit the mood for the time. You know, if it was funny, it'd be funny music. And so then I would just do voiceovers. And initially I struggled really bad. Chief told me I sound like Eeyore.
Don't feel bad. Chief told me that I shake so bad. I used to, like, my first video stuff was doing selfie videos, right?
Yeah.
So I'd roll around the pits of racetracks. And I mean, at some of these events, I'd do 50. I mean, tons of them. And my thought was kind of similar to yours, is I thought I need to keep the production value as low as possible, because every little knickknack or gadget that I buy is another battery to go dead, another thing to try to find, or thing to get connected. And I just told myself, I've got to keep this
A reason not to do it. It becomes a reason not to do it.
Yeah. So, but I walked up to Big Chief at, I think it was Lights Out 7 in Valdosta, Georgia, Donald Long's big promotion. And it was the year that it was pandemonium, people everywhere, traffic backed up for miles. And I'd been running around doing all these interviews, and I roll in there and I was shaking so bad. He actually commented on the video afterwards. He's like, what does this guy have, Parkinson's or something? I was like, geez, man, be nice to me. Like, I was interviewing you. You're picking on me, Big Chief. But no, anyways, so don't feel bad. But I actually think that voiceover idea is really smart, because I think that's what some of these videos that I watch on YouTube, and I consume a ton of YouTube automotive content. And sometimes you do kind of wish there was a little bit more of a guided tour happening, you know, to know what the hell's going on.
Yeah. So I have a very, very short attention span. I'm very much the attention span of your typical TikToker. I mean, if it doesn't catch you in the first 3 seconds, I'm down the road. And so when I edit videos, I edit them in a pace that if it can't keep my attention, then I don't feel like it's good enough for anybody else's attention. And so I edit things in a format or in a way that you almost can't take your eyes off of it. The way I zoom in and zoom out and zoom in, like I'll take a 5-minute conversation and I'll trim it down to a minute and a half. And I really, if I say or and, I cut out all those dead areas, and I try and trim everything down to where people won't lose their attention. But I don't know. I have no formal training. I have no idea how I know how to do all this stuff. I've just um, if you've ever had to plow snow for a living
You'll do
and
anything.
put salt down, you'll do damn near anything to not be in that position in the
Well,
winter.
and a lot of times that stuff we say, like around here when we're looking to hire someone, we would rather find somebody that's got passion or a unique talent or something else that's unteachable rather than a skill that is teachable. So I think it's all the other things that go into it. And then, you can learn the editing or the tools are getting so good that becomes no longer the restriction, I guess.
I'm sure it's a tremendous amount of work, Bill, but I'm curious how much has it probably accelerated and or helped the process not being reliant on other people necessarily to pull this off? Because I think that's, I see it each weekend at the racetrack when I go and I see all these teams have all these outside PR people, and which is a great thing, don't get me wrong, and outside video people and outside social media people, and I see the layer of complexity that it adds just having other people do it, because then you got to move these files, you got to get files from this card to that,
and then it's not as genuine. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about with Bill from the start. And I think the commentary here, you can see it here on the show today. It's all about the direct connection between this audience, his fans, his followers, and Bill.
I can't see the comments. Probably best that I can't. But
no, I mean it's a very, you can tell it's a very close connection. And so the more layers and things you add to that, production, people, the less genuine, and people can tell they want to be directly connected and hear it straight from the horse's mouth. And I think that goes back to the low production value stuff and just being totally end to end yourself.
Yeah, I don't think that I've trapped myself, honestly, and and I really should have maybe paid more attention to what I was doing, but I really didn't have any idea what I was doing. But like, if you watch Chief's videos, you'll see that it's only him and Jackie, and only the race cars, or only the cats, and only the shop. And I've really put myself in a position where I've put so much out there that when I go to a track, I don't know what someone's going to say to me next. And, if they're coming up to Chief, it's always Street Outlaws, or it's, you and Jackie, or you, the shop, and the cats. And it's very focused what they will allow you to see, or what they show. And in my case, I've really opened myself up to a lot. And the reason I guess that I did that is, one, because I wasn't smart enough not to, but two, when I started my channel, the only thing that I had that I felt was of any value to share with anyone was my family and my friends. I didn't have a fancy race car. In fact, I barely had a car. I mean, I had a Nova that was just, it was in pretty bad shape. But I mean, I sacrificed a lot the last 30 years as I was raising the boys, that, I didn't spend a lot of money on myself or my own racing. I pretty much stopped racing and focused on the kids and junior dragsters. And we bought a trailer, an enclosed trailer, and then we had a Shasta truck camper that sat on the back of my dually, and we would take the kids down to the Division III junior finals down at Bristol. And we had an old 454 gas dually with a Shasta truck camper and a 26-foot enclosed on the back. And my gosh, we thought we were high on the hog, but
you were, man. I mean, that's
you're
talking about my youth.
Yeah, we had it set up just like that.
Yeah, lawn chair in the back of my dad. My dad had a Chevy Suburban that had been converted to a dually. It don't get more badass than that, right? I mean, Chevy Suburban, big block, turbo 400, and two rows of seats or whatever, and then a floor jack and whatever random shit he'd have
rolling around the back.
Yeah, rolling around in the back. But no, I mean, those are, and thank God for memories like that. But I think like the takeaway that I'm having right now, and this is like a segue back to our earlier conversation about Jimmy Dale and Michael Pollan and what they've done with Little Gangsters.
Yeah,
it's important, in my opinion, that there is a pathway to get involved in drag racing, because a lot of the comments that I'm seeing here, Bill, are people telling us that, Bill is what got me to motivated me to build a car. The only way I ever got my wife on board with my racing is because she fell in love with their family and they enjoy watching the videos together. And so now she's a little more supportive of the hot rod habit. So kind of circling back around to that, racing out of a dually pickup and a tag trailer or a little open tag trailer. There's no shame in that game. And I think that the coolest thing that's happening is, and this is a great way for us to start talking a little bit about plates and 28s, is just making this a fashionable brand of drag racing. Because if you get on YouTube and spend too much time, I mean, you'll see it's twin turbo Lamborghinis and twin turbo Dodge Vipers and this 3,000 horsepower Pro Line deal and this Pro Mod deal, and all that stuff's fantastic. I mean, even No Prep Kings, which was kind of, a derivative of Street Outlaws, which was really rooted in relatability a lot of ways, but it kind of lost its way. Not necessarily a bad thing, just the natural evolution of things.
Everything has a shelf
drag
life.
Racing, right? Especially drag racing. I told Bill yesterday, I said, man, we drag racers, we'll find a way to screw anything up. Like, we're going to keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it until there ain't nothing left to push. And the most important thing, or I think one of the most significant things that are happening in our sport right now, is that it's become fashionable to race these small tire street cars, and you can build a brand, you can race for real money, you can race heads up. And to your point, I mean, I would like to discuss this today, because I don't know. I mean, I look at index racing and I'm going, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't more tracks implementing? Because a lot of these people, especially the entry-level guys that don't understand all the, different ways this sport is done, they want to run heads up. They want to race first to the finish line wins. And I understand that with index racing, there's a cap and you can still break out, but you're still leaving off a pro tree. You're still running down the track side by side. There's side by side. There's no handicap starts. I think it's
putting on a show. It's putting on a show too. And it's a show for the fans.
Way to get involved in drag racing. And I mean, you can go be, I'm not going to say you're going to dominate, but you can go be guilty by association for less than probably 40 grand, 30 grand. I mean, all in to go run one of those cars. And I think that that's an important thing, that guys such as yourself are making it fashionable to have these fast street cars that can be driven, that can be enjoyed, beyond the drag strip. I mean, it's an important thing. What do you make of the whole, index racing and like what happened somewhere along the line? It seemed to have lost its luster, and it feels like it's high time to bring it back.
So you made the point when you opened this podcast about community and how important community is, and bracket racers and heads up racers both love the sport of drag racing, but they're two different blood types that up until now have not mixed. They don't. And even still today, there's a lot of turmoil. But if we can find a way to mix the two together, it will do wonders for the entire sport, because bracket racers, despite what they may say, they are attracted to that outlaw atmosphere. They are attracted to events that fill the stands. And my point and my proof in this is, we talked about this yesterday. If you go back and you look at every Halloween hoot out race all over the country that has jet cars and attractions that bring spectators in, those attractions are maybe not the favorite thing of the bracket guys. They complain putting crap on the track but they're always there. The same people that complain about those events every year pack the place. And the reason is because the attractions that are there attract the rest of their family and their friends that may never actually attend a bracket race and sit in the stands and sit in the pits with them and drink a beer or have a Coke or a Pepsi and eat a hot dog or a hamburger with everybody and just hang out in the pits. They wouldn't normally do that because the bracket thing is not as spectator friendly as, let's say, No Prep Kings or a small tire no prep race or even a radial race. So that atmosphere is very important, but the difficult thing is packaging the two together and making them work together, or finding a way to bring the two worlds together, because the bracket guys, despite what they say on the internet, I mean, everybody hates all the people staying on the starting line, and I've had issues with that myself. I still love to see everybody out there on the starting line, and there was nothing more incredible um, than pulling into the burnout box through a crowd of people that are standing there with money over their head for your lane. That is something that just makes your
Yeah, I got
hair
chills
stand
right
up.
We
Yeah.
hear that. We hear that
Yeah.
across the board, from our pro mod racers pulling up at World Series of Pro Mod to
Yeah.
guys that have run, bracket racing or even NHRA national events where there's, obviously security and for other
Yeah.
reasons, not as many people on the track. That just changes your mindset when you roll through there to do a burnout. And
Yes.
no matter how pumped you were
Incredible.
for that before that moment, now it's just off the charts.
There is nothing like it. I've had my differences with certain promoters about, people on the starting line, and we've had some issues where people have gotten injured here recently. But the fact of the matter is, everybody loves the crowd on the starting line if you're a racer, until the point where they're drunk and they can't stand up, or they're, getting belligerent with your team members or your
Yeah, there's a
crew.
balance for sure.
There's got to be a balance, but there is nothing more incredible than that feeling of pulling into the burnout box and people stand there betting on you on the starting line. Oh my God, that's just
Well, I remember at the we did the Drag Illustrated World Door Slammer Nationals in Orlando in 2020, and it was kind of our first foray into introducing some of those stars and cars of the National Hot Rod Association into our outlaw grassroots style of drag racing. And we brought all these NHRA Pro Stock teams who had operated in that kind of buttoned up environment, right? And it's buttoned up for a reason. Like, not here to bag on it. I totally understand why it is the way that it is.
No, 100%.
But
Sure.
we brought all these, Erica Enders, Jed Coughlin, Greg
I think
Anderson.
it was Greg Anderson specifically is the one that commented about it.
Erica Enders actually said this to me one time, that in all of her years of drag racing, 6-time NHRA Pro Stock World Champion, she's done it all. I would argue that she's one of the greatest of all times. She had that experience you're talking about, Bill. It was a sea of people down on the starting line in Orlando. They have an incredible fan base at Orlando Speed World Dragway. They've got traveling fans, but they also have a really great local fan base. And there was just humanity everywhere, people everywhere.
I'll give you another example. Paige Coughlin.
Yep.
Paige Coughlin, her first ever no prep event that I think that she attended was Midnight Madness at KD Dragway, that outlaw hillbilly track with the shutdown that goes up the hill. And my son and I were the ones in charge of running that race. And she came down to that thing. That's Troy Coughlin's daughter.
Yeah.
Okay.
The heir to the throne, essentially, for many moons at Jeg's mail order parts.
Right. And Paige, you would have never known it was Paige Coughlin unless you knew who she was. You know what I mean? She was just standing around like everybody else and just watching. And she was there with a friend of my son, and she was in awe. Like, she had never experienced anything like that. And the excitement and the atmosphere just drew her in, and it just like it draws everybody in. And it's so important. The atmosphere at these races is incredible. And even though the bracket racers may throw rocks at the events a little bit here and there, I'm going to prove my point too. I'm going to stick my money where my mouth is, I think. But I got something coming up for this plates and 28s thing. I think I'm going to throw out there to Rob this evening. But those guys, there's 3 index classes there already. But no matter what they say, you can't deny that the atmosphere at those events is not electric and it's not magnetic. Like, it just draws you in and you want to be part of it.
No, there's no doubt.
What's the news? Let us break the news right here. Can we go ahead and do it?
Well, I haven't talked to Rob about it yet, but I'm thinking about it. We'll just see. Like, I'm really stuck right now because this event, I'll be honest, I never wanted to do this. I didn't really want to get involved because I have been involved in this a few years ago and saw what it was like. But I had to learn a very valuable lesson. And it was a very difficult lesson to learn, is that racing fans and racers tend to use emotion rather than saying what they really mean. And what I mean by that is they'll say something out of emotion that you might take as a personal attack, and it feels like a personal attack. But you really have to sit back and read the comment and then ask yourself, what would make them feel that way? What's really the root cause of this problem here? Why would they say something like that? Because it really doesn't make any sense sometimes what they say. And I've had to learn that was a really tough lesson, because when I first started this, I poured my heart and soul into this stuff, and it was everything I thought about. It was something I dearly loved. And then on the daily, I mean, I was constantly being attacked, and you're only doing this for your kids to win, or you can do this, or you're only doing it for that. And it wasn't. It was generally my love for the sport of drag racing, and I honestly, we kind of we got in trouble. Honestly, we got in trouble for street racing, got caught in the act, and we kind of made a plea deal with the judge to let my son off easy if we would create an event to bring street race cars off the street and bring them to a track, because that was when we went to court.
I like that, Judge.
Well, yeah.
That's
so okay,
that's a good idea.
Yeah, so we went to court. We're caught in the act by a state highway patrolman. Caught in the act. No way
Like
out.
no argument. Yeah.
No argument. Billy passed a state highway patrolman that was sitting in a median, passed him at about 120 miles an hour with the candles lit on this little nitrous S10. Went right past him and racing a diesel all-wheel drive pickup truck. The diesel pickup truck ran. He split, and Billy went a different direction, and the officer followed Billy, and Billy was on slicks, and he was thinking about running, but thankfully he didn't. He just pulled over and stopped. They blocked the street, and that's a whole story, but we got pinched for that. And when you go into a judge or into a courtroom, and the judge says, "What in the hell are you thinking? You're his father," right? Yeah. And this is I'm telling you exactly what happened. You are his father. What in the hell are you doing at 1:30 in the morning at Rickenbacker Airport in Columbus? There's a story behind that too, by the way. Rickenbacker Airport in Columbus, helping your kid illegally street race. Well, Your Honor, there aren't any races at tracks for things like this. There aren't? Then make one, he said. Fair enough. I might be able to do something like that. So I reached out to my local track operator, who was at the time struggling because the bracket program just, honestly, it's really tough to make money at just simply holding bracket races. And I said, "Rod, you got a test and tune coming up, and is there any chance that we could hold a little street car event?" "Sure, I don't care. You can't hurt my program. Like, it's going down the tubes. If you want to try something, sure, go ahead." And dude, it took off like wildfire. Primarily, I think, to my son's ability to edit and put footage together and put it to music and make it hit people. Like, when you see your own, this is revolutionary, 4 or 5 years ago. For you to have a small tire street car in a music video, are you shitting me? With all these other cool cars and things happening, and it was like people couldn't believe this was happening. It was like 1320 video in their local hometown.
Yeah, it's validation.
And
we talk about that a lot. It validates what those guys are working toward, what they imagine in their head, the ideal situation that this could be. And that's a lot of what we do at Drag Illustrated. We've talked about that for many years, that a lot of our business and a lot of our approach to this is validating what these guys are doing, and shining a light on guys that typically wouldn't get it.
There'd be no Drag Illustrated if it wasn't for the fact that my dad was one of those racers that had never been cool, had never been in the club, had never, wasn't racing NHRA professionally, wasn't a part of whatever was the hot thing at the moment. And so it's like, we've got to do something to validate the efforts of the people like my dad who are burning the candle at both ends, chasing the drag racing dream. We've got to do something to keep them doing that. And it's like one of the biggest services I think we provide the entire drag racing community is making people feel good about burning their money going drag racing. Because essentially, no matter how successful you are, you're likely not going to outpace what you've spent in your earnings, and you're also going to lose a lot more than you win. I mean, even the most successful drag racers in the world take a lot of L's along the way, and if you don't have somebody making you feel good about it at the bare minimum, it's hard to get.
And that's what we do at World Series of Pro Mod, and now the Winter Series as well. It's more of that same thing. And then, like you're saying, you do that once the first time, the guys see it, then you go to have your next event. They think back to that and think, all right, if these guys, if this is the production they're putting into it, and this is the light that's going to be shown onto me, I'm showing up, and then the event grows. So, talk to us about that evolution and where you are now with the plates and 28 steel. And I know we've got John Sears coming on here in a couple minutes as well to talk about some of the rules and details.
Yeah. So, and I've tried to explain this as best I can, and you have to break off little crumbs of a loaf of bread and just sprinkle it out and let them, absorb it a little at a time, because it's so much that you can just overwhelm people. But I've tried to explain to people that this event, the Plates and 28s event that I'm helping Rob Winley at Edgewater put together for this fall, the best way I can describe it is it will be the movie trailer for the movie we're about to see next summer.
Love it.
I'm not filming a movie, but it's literally like my son blowing me up. It's going to be literally a movie set almost for our local drag racing scene, the tri-state area, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, that area. That's a hotbed for heads up streetcar drag racing. And I need as many media outlets and photographers and videographers as I can possibly attract. And I need them to work with me and share their footage. And I will in turn share their footage with the watermarks and try to get them exposure. It's a
give and take type deal.
It's a give and take, but it is the videographers and the photographers are so important. So I can't stress this enough, how important those people are to what we're doing. But we're trying to use this as a stepping stone, because I've been out of the promotional thing for 4 or 5 years. Honestly, I had no idea this would explode like what it seems to be doing. I didn't know that anybody would pay attention to what I had to say. I didn't think anybody would really pay attention to what I was going to try and do. Maybe everybody figured I was a has-been, washed up. He's out. I couldn't have been more wrong, because what I felt in my heart as I watch these weekend events over the last 2 or 3 years, I keep seeing cars go up on Marketplace for sale or raffles. And I'm like, oh my God, every time I see one of these cars I haven't seen for 2 or 3 years, each one of those cars I keep seeing come up for sale. Oh man, I haven't seen that car. And by the way, his 3 or 4 buddies that used to come with him, I don't see them anymore either. Where are these cars? Where are they? Some of them are sold. Some of them are just covered up. Some of them haven't been to the track in 4 or 5 years. Some of them 20 years, and I had a feeling that there was a need for this. I had a strong feeling, but I had no idea until the messages started pouring in with cars sitting in a garage and the guy's holding the car cover up, taking a picture. Hey man, thanks for what you're doing.
Gave me chills again. I'm like, I get them a lot, but like there's a few things more rewarding than messages like that, right, Bill? I mean, and to know that you're getting someone excited that maybe has kind of thought that this deal had passed them by, there's nothing quite like it. And I do think that goes back to what we've been talking about is the thing that I appreciate about it, and what I've learned going racing with Jimmy Dale and being at these small tire, no prep deals and going out to XRP, there is a very large community of guys that have those cars that don't necessarily fit in a class at Lights Out, or don't necessarily fit in a class in NMCA or NMRA, or, can't run as well as you need to run in PDRA Super Street or whatever. I mean, you got mid 4-second cars in that deal. And to have a place that, like you said, is sexy and fun to be a part of and has that atmosphere and has that electricity in the air, but to be able to do it with like a low 5-second small tire car, that's pretty enticing, man. It's pretty exciting.
I'm going to tell you something. We talked about this yesterday on the phone, and I'm going to try and sneak this in right here, right now, because I know John's waiting, and I don't want to take up.
Well, we're actually waiting on him
to reach him.
Take your time.
Okay.
John is traveling, so this may be touch and go with him.
Okay. I just don't want to take anybody else's time up. I want to recognize.
No, we want to have both of you guys on for a bit.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things that I noticed the other day, and probably one of the most important things I've taken away from this experience so far in bringing this event out, is how important it is for the people who are coming to want to be there for the right reasons. And I think your point about validation is so on point. It's obvious to anybody how important the validation is, and for the people who are coming to want to be there just to experience the event, just to be part of the event. And I think a key factor in reading your compass of where things are headed is and all the posts that I've put up over the last week or so, 2 weeks about this event, I have not yet seen one racer ask, what's the entry and what's the payout? Not one.
It's
irrelevant.
It's irrelevant.
Because
they want to be a part of it.
They want to be there.
Where the magic happens, man, is you've transcended that initial value offering where it's rooted in price. I actually had this conversation with Jimmy Dale and Mike Poland yesterday, that I do think that, we have this kind of desire sometimes as a sport to give it all away. We treat everything like it's a church, but that's not really a sustainable model. And it's very difficult to do without television revenue, without crazy sponsorship dollars, these things. And you also get buy-in from people when they've spent a little bit of money. It's going to be harder to cancel at the last minute. It's going to be harder to change plans. You may work a little harder to go ahead and get the car ready because you're going to spend some money. You're committed. And I think that's an important part of it. But to hear that you've not had anybody beating you up about what it's going to cost to be a part of it. I haven't had
a single person.
That's big. Hey, guess what? We got John Sears here, the man, the myth, the legend. I'm going to let's get him on. I'm going to jump off so we can get John maximized on here.
All right.
What's going on,
John,
fellas?
what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? The man of the hour, tech extraordinaire, John Sears. Welcome to the show, buddy. I appreciate you taking some time.
Hey, I'm going to switch you guys over so I can hear you because volume is almost now.
Okay, hold on. We'll mute you for a second while you get organized. Hold on. Here, let me mute him. There we go. We'll get him switched over. Bill. Let's see. The old driving and talking thing, always questionable. We'll see what happens.
John is such
I asked him, I said, hey, can you pull over for just like a couple of minutes and so we can do video on here? And so I think he's going to try to keep driving. Okay. This man never stops moving, and he's involved in so much stuff behind the scenes. He's public about some of this stuff, but you were talking, Bill, before we got on here about how much he's involved in that maybe a lot of people don't even know about, and how much he's been involved with your deal.
Yes. So one of the most important things that I have learned, and I learned it very early on, like at the very first event we ever did, was when you bring street race cars into a front side surface, most of these street race cars, they are not set up to go down a front side. So immediately, these cars are wheeling and they're smashing down and they're wild and people are screaming and like, holy crap, this is crazy. We love this. And there's always that radio guy sitting back here that's got the front end tied down and he's just licking his chops, So, and funny that it happened this way, but one of the very first things we ever had was we had a very relatable, very popular small tire street race Fox body Mustang show up at one of our very first events. And the guys from 10 Soldiers were there with a little purple love truck. It was like a tube chassis thing. And they were trying to hit him for $500 on a bet, and the blood was in the water immediately. You know what I mean? And so you really have to have somebody that's willing to stand guard and put the rules down and stand by them and be the asshole in the room sometimes. You're going to have to tell people things that they don't want to hear. And inevitably, the race cars are always trying to get into the street car class because they know that they can clean up. But somebody has to be the gatekeeper. Somebody has to keep the wolves at bay and allow some of the street cars to have their fun. You know what I mean?
I agree. And I think you've said on social a lot, and it was something that it was the reason I wanted to chat with you, honestly, is one of my favorite rules that I'd ever seen written in a rule book. I went to the World Street Nationals in Orlando for the first time, I think in 2002. No, 2005. That was the first time I ever went to Orlando. I remember it was a big pilgrimage. Me and my dad and a couple of our buddies piled into we borrowed a motorhome from our friend and drove 20 hours down to Orlando and camped out all week. And anyways, it was a hell of a deal. And I was completely enamored with that event, the World Street Nationals. They had Outlaw Pro Street, Outlaw 10.5, Heavy Street, and Drag Radial. They were all quarter mile, very minimal rules, but it was, divided up nicely. Incredible event. And it's actually coming up here shortly, the new version of it under Ozzy Moya's watch. But they had Carl Weisinger had a line in the rules that always, and it was in every class. If your car doesn't fit the spirit of the class, we reserve the right to refuse, entry or whatever. And I just thought that you can't ask for a better line, because there are these things, and sometimes a guy can slide in, but you do need to protect the integrity of these programs. And like you said, sometimes it's determining whether or not a car or a combination fits the spirit of what you're trying to accomplish. Because it can be that one guy that comes in with a car that's kind of operating in the gray area. Everybody knows it doesn't really belong, but technically it fits, and it can fuck the whole thing up for, it's like one bad apple, and that guy really means no harm. Yeah, there's some opportunistic dudes that are trying to take advantage.
No, I mean, heads up racing is heads up racing is all about taking advantage of the gray areas and thinking outside the box. That is the racer's job. The tech guy and the promoter's job is to battle that back as best you can and keep things as fair as you can. That's why if you look at the race rules for outlaw, or not outlaw, but no mercy and ducks races, my God, they started out with 1 page and now they're 6 pages long, because the racers will push and push and push and push. It's their job to destroy what we've created for them. It's literally, that's why bracket racing took off, because it just literally did away with everything. Everybody's only allowed to run so fast, and that's it. But unfortunately, that's not very spectator friendly. So.
It's not. And it's how big of a challenge. So take us through a little bit about this, because I've read about it online. I've watched some of the videos that you've put out, but kind of run us through the lay of the land of plates and 28, specifically like class breakdown. And while we're getting John parked before we dive into each one of these, but kind of give us the overall lay of the land of what we have coming up at Edgewater as part of plates and 28s.
So the plates and 28s event is mostly centered around street legal cars. Everything that goes there, with the exception of the index classes, every entry there has to have legal tag and insurance. Okay, so like Billy's S10 and Tommy's Falcon, while they've fought the good fight, and they've done the best they can with what they've got to work with and their knowledge. Those cars are pretty well outgunned when you set them next to a tube chassis car, or an Outlaw 275 car or something like that. They really struggle, especially on a front side. So plates and 28s is basically outlawed every tube chassis car. At most, you're allowed a back half car in plates and 28s. You don't have to make the cruise for plates and 28s, because some of these cars are inherently street race cars, and they're on methanol, so you don't really want to drive them around. They don't necessarily have full exhaust or anything like that. But if you were out on the streets at Texas 2K and cops rolled up, you could probably jump in your car and drive 3 or 4 blocks away and wait for somebody to meet you with a trailer. That's the cars I want. That's the cars I'm looking for.
I love
See
it.
what I mean?
How important, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I think it's worth mentioning here. You talked about just how important it is, the streetcar aspect of some of these hot rods, especially like this drag and drive movement we've seen explode I mean, no sort of new happening, but it has exploded in recent years. And I do agree with you that I think a lot of that is rooted in just how much you're able to enjoy it. I had that conversation with Alex and Dennis Taylor one time, big names in the drag and drive world. He told me, he goes, man, I enjoy getting to spend this much time in the car. Like, traditional drag racing is you're going and you're driving to the track and you're unloading it. And, best case scenario, after 4 or 5 days, 4 or 5 rounds, you've been in the car a total of 30, 45 seconds, you know what I mean? Under power. And so with a street car though, in these drag and drive movements, you got a car that you can cruise to Sonic, or like you said, even if it's only a few blocks, or you could drive it around your neighborhood and give your kid a ride or putt around or what have you. That's an important part of that, especially, in these kind of troubling economic times. If a guy's going to spend that much money on something, they need to be able to enjoy it as much as they can.
Yeah. And I think we had a discussion yesterday on the phone that, you bought a race car and you take it to the track and, you realize, holy crap, this is like a job. This, all of a sudden, if you don't have help, this isn't much fun to do all by yourself. But if it's a street car and you can literally drive it to the track and have fun, and after you get done, you can take your wife or your kids to a Dairy Queen or go get dinner in it or something, those are memories, and that's a level of enjoyment that you don't get out of anything that's strictly a race car. The only time the race cars are really of any enjoyment is when the wind light comes on and if you're standing with it in the winter circle. Other than that, a
tremendous amount of work. Yes.
Tremendous amount of work. Yeah.
It's, that has been, that's one of the, I think, the big challenges. And I made myself stop talking about it because I thought to myself, I remember growing up, all my dad ever told me was like how hard it is. Wes, this shit's so hard. We worked so hard to do this so hard. I'm like, well, we probably better quit telling people this because no one's ever going to want to be involved with it, And it was funny because my dad runs an auto repair shop. And so you always have these like regulars that are coming in and hanging out. Right. Yep. And we would always convince one of them to go racing with us. Hey, Jerry, you want to go racing with us this weekend? Yeah, I haven't been to the drag strip since 1972. I'll go or whatever. And then they come once. And by the time they've sweat through their socks on day one, that's the last time they're going. You know what I mean? By the time we got the car unloaded, they're like, you guys do this on your own and keep me posted. I don't know that I'll be back. And because you have to love it.
You have to love it.
You have to love it. And I can certainly sense that with you. So headlining class is the 28s. Pretty much
28s, yeah. That's
place in 28s.
That will be the fastest of the small tire classes with the least number of restrictions. We're going to have a class for modern muscle cars. We're going to have a class for stick shift cars. We're going to have a class for daily drivers that have to foot brake. No trans brakes allowed. And we've got one class that I'm really hoping takes off, maybe above all the others or just as much as plates in 28s. And that's Nostalgia Street, where you're only allowed carbureted small blocks or big blocks with either nitrous or blowers, one or the other. It's a class. The spirit of the class is the late 70s and 60s street scene, where nitrous oxide was like, ooh, that's witchcraft,
Yeah.
If it didn't have a blower sitting on top of it or a nitrous kit, there were no turbos. There was no such thing as electronic fuel injection. Most of the cars were pretty primitive, and I think that there's a lot of those cars that are built that way have been parked and covered up for a long time because there's really nowhere to compete unless you're bracket racing or index racing, and not everybody's interested in that, and I don't think it's necessarily that they want to come out and they're there to win, but maybe just to pull into that burnout box and feel what they have seen in the YouTube videos on 1320, on Street Racing Channel, on Urban Hillbilly, and all these other channels. That feeling of going out in the shop, pulling the cover off, throwing a fresh battery in it, go through the carburetor, put some new needle and seats in it, get the car on some slicks that are fresh, make sure the tires are all solid, and pulling into that crowd of people one time, I think it will electrify a lot of people who have sat on the sidelines for a long time.
And I think that opportunity to race heads up. I mean, again, going back to my youth.
Even if they can't win, even if they're just to have that opportunity to be in a video, we talked about the validation. I mean, it literally gives me goosebumps just thinking about some of the people that I know have these cars that have been tucked away or they haven't been at a track for years. For them to see their car and them through the glass pull into that burnout box with the music thumping and the people waving, and it's such an incredible atmosphere that I really want to share that with as many people as I can.
The more people we get to have that experience, Bill, like that, and I honestly think that is what so much of like all of our mission should be rooted in, is trying to create those experiences for people.
Yes.
I have this conversation a lot with folks whenever, I'll see a race happen and the winner's circle looks like a ghost town. There's like, the husband, the driver and his wife, and their dog. And I'm going, guys, everybody involved in this event, this may well be the only race this dude ever wins. Like if you've been around drag racing much, you realize that winning is hard. I mean, it's extremely difficult to win 4 rounds of drag racing or 5 rounds of drag racing. And some of these streetcar events with dozens and dozens of cars, you have to even last longer than that. So to string those runs together and be in that winner's circle at the end of the night, it needs to be a memorable moment. It needs to be something that you'll never forget. And same as rolling into the water box through that sea of people, you'll never forget that moment. And hopefully that's enough to get you to, upgrade your program or invest a little bit, or, what I mean? Do whatever you've got to do to kind of keep chasing this dream. I think it's a really important thing that you're doing. I'm curious, Bill, you mentioned Nitrous Express earlier. We have a great relationship with Nitrous Express right down the road from me in Wichita Falls, Texas. Great people, Mike, Poland, Jimmy Dale, everybody over there, Chris. But I'm just curious, like, what has been the reaction from the industry to you? Because I've seen, all the builds that you guys do, the amount of hands-on mechanic work that you guys do, I think that's pretty refreshing to a lot of these people. We see a lot of these projects kind of get rolled into the shop and then get rolled out of the shop or rolled onto the dyno, and you kind of miss all that in between, which is what is pretty relatable. I mean, most of us are, Chris Alston at Chris Alston Chassis Works told me one time, he goes, Wes, we've built our business, so much of our business on the back of cars that are still on jack stands. You know what I mean? Like most people are still working towards getting their back half car done or still trying to finish that Mustang 2 front suspension on their car or whatever. Yeah. And so I think it's been really cool the way that you kind of tell that middle story, the taking the motor back out or whatever. What has been the response from the community and specifically the industry? Because I know you have a lot of brands that support you and a lot of people who have jumped in to be a part of what you've created.
Dude, it's incredible. If you would have told me that this many people would jump on board and offer to help us, I would have told you you're crazy just 3 or 4 years ago. But we've got a very unique opportunity with Bob McVeigh up at the machine shop. And even just our local parts guys, Uncle Terry at Jegs or Mark down at A1 Auto Parts. Like we've introduced these people, real people that really work these jobs and really put their heart and soul into things. And we've introduced them to this huge audience. And it's just been incredible. Like there's people that stop every week at A1 Auto Parts down at Buckeye Lake just to take a picture with Mark or, buy something that they really don't necessarily need, but they, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Want to buy it from Mark. Yeah.
Yeah. And people know him and it's incredible. There are people that will drive across Ohio. Like they're just driving through Ohio and they're on 70 and they'll jump off at 71 and head north to exit 110 and they go to 11th Avenue just to take their picture in front of the Jeg sign out front. And they go in and they get their autograph from Uncle Terry and take pictures with him and Miss Kimmy, one of the ladies that works up there at the counter. And it's, like Jack's Wax, they'll tell me like, man, every time you post something about Jack's Wax stuff, they said we see the spike immediately as soon as you put a video out, and it's really incredible that people are so connected with our family. And like, I think it's just how relatable everybody is, and like there's a character in our channels that everybody can relate with, whether it's my brother or Mark or my kids or my wife, especially my wife. My God, there are so many women that watch my channel for whatever reason I don't understand, but they're it's we've literally had people come and say, hey, my wife and I haven't spent any time together watching anything in years, and my wife just loves to watch your channel because of the shenanigans you guys get into. And it's just really remarkable, the amount of love and support that's out there for what we're doing. It's just, I don't know. I would have never guessed that this would happen, but the industry has been wonderful, very supportive. We go to PRI and it's like we can't even hardly move anymore. You can't have like I try to go and visit some of these people that have supported us, like ATM and Trick Flow and RC Comp Wheels and all these guys that help support us. And it's like I go to their booth and I'm there trying to have a conversation, and I just end up shaking hands with people, and I can't talk to who I came to talk to because there's so many people. It's
awesome, man.
great.
I think that we got Nick Butler in the comments here. Check this out. Women watch for Bill's buttery smooth voice.
Yeah.
I think that might be what it is. I'm not sure, but it seems reasonable. Kind of closing comments here, Bill, and I really appreciate your candor and your willingness to spend so much of your afternoon here on the Wes Buck Show. We all appreciate it, and I know everybody tuning in appreciates it. But I am curious, just kind of like, do you think I do think what you guys have done is special, but I do think that there may be a message here that if Bill can do it, you might be able to too. And I do think that that's something that we need to see more of in our sport. And it's happening slowly but surely. We're seeing more YouTube channels. But what I'm really talking about is just what you've experienced by putting yourself out there, albeit uncomfortable at times, maybe still to this day. I know that I still get a little bit of butterflies in my stomach every time I do this show, like, oh my God, what am I going to say something stupid, or I'm going to piss somebody off? But putting yourself out there consistently, it can really make a difference. It's changed your life, connecting you and your family to the masses. And do you have any like encouragement, I guess, that you would offer, like the guy, because every year we do the Drag Illustrated 30 under 30, and your son has been a part of it, and I think we lost Bill for a minute, but I'm sure we'll get him back here momentarily. I'd say somebody called him, Michael or JT. We'll get him back momentarily. But part of the reason we took the Drag Illustrated 30 under 30 is to identify this next crop of up and comers, this next group of difference makers and rising stars. And I was going to, pick Bill's brain a little bit, because I would love for some of these young folks, or these guys that are chasing the drag racing dream, like we always say, to maybe hear something that would click with them that says, you know what, it's okay. It's okay to stumble around. It's okay to maybe, not put out the best ever video. Because I was going to ask Bill, like, did you ever put a video out that you thought was like a barn burner and it kind of fell flat? I know we've had a few of those moments, over the years. Yeah. But I do think it's kind of interesting. And I think that and that's what I hope people take away from this conversation.
There's so many keys to it. Like, and Bill didn't necessarily say this, but I think, don't watch your own stuff. Don't believe your own hype. Don't like tell yourself this video is going to be the best thing ever, or this next one's the worst. A lot of times they're somewhere in between, and don't be afraid to show that imperfection. I think that's exactly what you were saying there. We all just want to see in this day and age a finished, polished project or product, and that's not the case. And I think Bill is proof positive too. It doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to be high production, and you can show, like you were saying, those in between parts that so many people can relate to.
I agree, and that's what I was going to ask. I think we got you back, brother. Oh, nope, lost him again. And here we are in the throes of technology. This is what we're talking about, trying to keep it easy, but it's still a challenge. And hey,
he did good. He did good for an hour and a half.
He did good for an hour and a half. And I do want to say thank you guys all so much for tuning in. A whole bunch of fresh faces on here, a whole bunch of names that I've not seen before. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. Bill's got us beat by 10x 10x. He's got
Yeah, man.
160,000 followers. We got
And
16,000
and
on
strong
YouTube.
on YouTube. That's the thing too. I mean, we do pretty well over on Facebook. We're kind of diving into this YouTube thing, but the YouTube numbers today are incredible, and it's a testament to your following and your audience, Bill. So
What did I miss?
yeah,
I'm
if
sorry.
you're
Brandon Dollar keeps blowing up my phone. He's kicked me off this thing twice.
Brandon Dollar, stop calling Bill. Wait about 10 more minutes.
Real quick, Bill, where I was
I'm
going
sorry.
with it was just hope. No worries. No apology necessary. But I was just hoping that if, as people watched along with this conversation today, if they take away anything, it's just that I hope that here's a guy who not too terribly long ago was spending his days, running heavy equipment, driving a dump truck up and down the road. And here he is now as a full-time content creator and an influencer. I know everybody's a little bit weird around that word, but it's an absolute fact. I mean, you mentioned it with Jack's Wax. I mean, you make a video, they sell product. That's influencing. And I'm just curious if you had any kind of like closing words of wisdom or any encouragement. My ears are open as well, because I do think that there's probably, who knows, the next John Force may be watching this stream, the next Stevie Fast Jackson, the next Billy the Kid. You never know. So what do you think helps get young folks over or get anybody? I mean, not necessarily young people, but anybody that's kind of struggling to put themselves out there. What do you think can help get them over the hump?
I can tell you the first thing that is so important, and it's the most important thing that I can possibly tell anybody, is if you are doing something just for the attention, you're probably going to fail. If you're doing something that comes natural to you, that you dearly love, that you are dearly connected with, and it means everything to you, it's the first thing you think about in the morning and the last thing you think about at night, you're probably going to do okay, as long as you can be articulate and be honest about who you are, be honest about your quirks, be honest about your mistakes, be honest about your shortcomings. And just, you have to put yourself out there in a way that you're not going to fail because you're not really that person, or you're not really that adamant about something, or you're not really genuine. As long as you can be yourself and be genuine and be entertaining at the same time, you'll do okay. But you've got to work hard. I mean, I work more hours now than I ever worked when I was doing excavating. And unfortunately, you can see the bags under my eyes. I usually try to wear sunglasses when I go live, but my wife told me not to do it this time.
Oh, well, we have no problem with it, buddy. Did we lose him again? Oh, no, we got
I'm still here.
There he is.
Here, look. See how much better I look with sunglasses on?
You look damn good in those, buddy. You may got to take those off. You'll have more women subscribers.
Yeah.
It may have a problem,
But
the Hoskinson household.
Yeah,
But
just be yourself, man. If you want to do this, be yourself and do something that you absolutely love, that you would do regardless. If that's where you're at in life with something, then I say do it. But if you're really just trying to do it to get followers, or you're just trying to do it to get attention, and you're not really genuine about it, you probably better think twice. It's very difficult because for me, I'll end with this. I'll keep this as short as I can, Wes. I'm sorry.
no apology.
Naturally, I am an introvert. I don't do well in crowds of people. I don't do well around people I don't know. And I'm a very serious person. Sometimes I'm a little dry, and Jimmy Dale's helped me with that some, but it's difficult for me. For the biggest reason it's difficult for me is because I don't feel that I'm anybody special. I don't feel that I deserve the recognition or the platform or whatever you call this, because I'm still the same person I always was, and I'm still doing the same things I've always done with the same people I've always done it with. So to me, nothing has changed. I'm still the same person struggling through day to day like everybody else is. And so what makes it difficult is when I go to an event or something and somebody comes up and they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it's you. I can't believe I'm talking to you." I feel so, I don't know how to explain it. Awkward. Yeah. I feel so uncomfortable when someone puts me on a pedestal, because I'm the same guy that used to yell and scream at my kids, and I'm the same guy that still doesn't use jack stands when I should be, or the same guy that does things that we all do that nobody wants to admit. I'm still that same person, and I still have the same faults, and I'm trying to do better, and I'm trying to be a better person. But my gosh, man, sometimes people just seem like they put me on such a pedestal, and I can't live up to it. There's just no way. And so that's uncomfortable. And honestly, sometimes I get frustrated. Like I get frustrated because I don't feel I deserve that kind of attention. So bear with me if you come and see me and I'm busy. I don't like talking when I'm busy. I grew up taught that when you're working, you don't talk.
Yeah.
That was the old school people that I grew up with, my grandfather. When you're on the clock, you're working and you don't talk. And I still struggle with that today when people come up and want to have chit chat and talk while I'm working. I can't do it. It's been ground into my head that you don't talk to people, or you don't screw around, you don't dilly dally, they used to call it, when you're supposed to be working. And
aren't those fun stories?
Yeah,
I mean, it's so funny. It's the same. I still don't put my hands in my pockets, because if my dad saw me put my hands in my pockets, he'd push me to the ground.
Well, there's a lot of great racers.
I mean, it's like a true story.
Yeah, a lot of great racers fit that mold too. Like I think about Ricky Smith. We talk about him a lot. A lot of people get the impression.
Billy Glidden,
Billy Glidden, Bob
Warren
Johnson.
Johnson.
Yep. Greg Anderson, Warren Johnson. A lot
guys
of these
that are notoriously kind of dry and a little prickly, and you get them away from that. Like I saw Greg Anderson at the Texas Stampede of Speed Champions dinner on Wednesday night last week, and he's like the life of the party. He's the funnest guy. But dude, if you encounter him at the racetrack,
I can be, but it is so hard at the track because let's break this down just real quick, and I'll try and keep this short. These are my children that are racing these cars at these hellaciously dangerous places. And I pray every time those kids make a pass. Sometimes I'll even kneel down behind the car, and I don't want to let go of the spoiler until I absolutely have to, because I know as long as I got to hold that spoiler, they're still safe. You know what I mean? But it's really tense for me, especially first round with the kids at a place we've never been to, or a place that's really dangerous and there's a lot of stuff going on. And I'm just not very personable on the starting line. I try to avoid contact. Sometimes I'll wear my sunglasses until I absolutely can't. Yeah. Until I can't see at night, I'll wear my sunglasses just to avoid eye contact, because inevitably everybody wants to start a conversation, and sometimes they don't even know what they want to say. They just want to say, hey man, I love you guys, I love what you're doing, and I thank you guys so much for that. But sometimes the people just want to ask a question. They want to start a conversation with a very difficult question to answer that I don't have time to sit there and go through, and that's the frustrating part. So I guess if you come up and see me someplace and we're at the racetrack, just a knuckle bump or a high five. Thanks, man, for all you do. I love you guys. We watch you every night. Wonderful. Thank you guys for that. But I try not to get into long, drawn out conversations while the kids are racing, because I'm very stressed out and tense.
It is, man. You can't make a mistake in that situation for all those reasons you just said. So yeah, you have to take it seriously. But even more so, I think why everyone's enjoyed this conversation so thoroughly, because they're getting to see that side of you, or get some of these questions answered, or some of these things that, when you're out, making your normal content, you may not cover. So I think this is showing more of that genuine nature in that side of you that they may not know. So next time you see Bill on the starting line, fist bump only.
I want to give you the adulation that I think you deserve, man, because obviously we're just getting to know each other, but I'm blown away by what you guys have created. I'm super happy for you, and I'm grateful, actually, because we need more people spreading the gospel of drag racing. I think about this sport, and I say it at the beginning of every show, but I truly believe this is the great American motorsport. I've been blessed in my life to travel around the world and see a lot of cool shit and go to a lot of different events. And I tell you, when it comes to motorsports, there's nothing quite like what we do. And it extends far beyond the racers, though, or excuse me, it extends far beyond the race cars. I always like to say that fast cars, big burnouts, the sights, the sounds, the smells, those things will bring someone out to the track, maybe twice, maybe 2 or 3 times. But what will keep them coming back for a long time is being a part of that community. Connecting with somebody, getting to know these men and women. And that's where the magic really happens. And I appreciate the community you've built because it's driving our sport in the right direction. There was a guy in here in the comments a second ago that said he'd learned more from the old man than he'd learned from his own father. You know what I mean? Like, that's the type of impact you're making on these people. And I just think that it's an incredible thing, man. And I genuinely appreciate your time. Closing question. And this is just one thing, and I'm going to get us on a fucking tangent here, and I apologize. But
no, you're good.
How hard is it?
This is a blessing to me to be here. You're not affecting me. I'll be here as long as you want me to be here.
Well, I'm just curious because that's one of the things.
We got a lot of carburetor questions, actually.
Oh, God.
No, I'm just kidding. We don't have time for that, man.
Yeah, we don't have time to dive into carburetor.
That'll be part 2.
But I am curious, like, that's one of the things we've had a really hard time with this because we actually put the cast of Street Outlaws on the cover of the magazine about 10 years ago. And you'd have thought, I mean, I may as well have put Hitler on the cover of the magazine. I mean, there were people, our readers, calling the NHRA, telling them not to let me announce, not to let me, I mean, because
terrible.
It's crazy. I can't imagine. There was actually, and I don't mean to like air out dirty laundry here, but there was a retired police officer that made it like his life's work to get the NHRA never to let me announce again because I had previously endorsed illegal street racing. And my argument for that has always been,
we didn't want him here anyway, announcing.
Yeah. Which is done. I'm no longer announcing, for the record. However, I've always kind of subscribed to the mindset that it's not Discovery Channel's responsibility to raise my children. It's mine. I'm the one who's responsible for teaching them right and wrong. And if I'm relying on Discovery Channel to do that, I'm doomed from the get-go. But I always looked at Street Outlaws in the upswell, the rising tide they created for car culture in general as a positive. I mean, I joked that I don't care if they were doing burnouts in school zones or on the moon or whatever. Burnouts happening, drag racing happening on broadcast television, on primetime TV is a victory for our sport. And I'm not going to, you can't really spin it any other way. Hollywood has glamorized horrible things for years. I mean, think about all the mob movies that we love. I mean, they're full of violence and drugs and all this other stuff, but we love those movies. They're classics, but we don't, vilify all the actors in those movies. They're playing a role. They're putting on a show. And that's how I saw Street Outlaws. But the point I was trying to get to is how difficult it has been for us at Drag Illustrated, who have really championed organized drag racing, traditional drag racing, to get our arms around this street outlaw no prep community because of some of the sketchy places they race, Bill. And I'm just curious, like, you're a responsible guy, you're a family man, you've got kids, you've got grandkids now. How challenging is that going to some of these locales that are pretty sketchy? I mean, I know some of the most exciting racing that's happening in our country, our beloved Yellow Belly Dragway right down the street from me in Dallas, pretty sketchy joint. Safe place to race, I would argue, compared to some of the joints you guys go to. But what is that? How big of a challenge is that for you as a father and a promoter and all these other kind of role hats you wear to go and race at some of those places, especially as fast as these cars are getting?
The most difficult thing I think I have ever done as a father, and what we're doing, was the very first trip we made to the pad in New Orleans. The backdrop here is that we had no following. There was no YouTube channel. There was none of this. We were just normal, everyday people, just like everybody else. But the truck did have a little bit of a reputation, and there were enough people who knew what the truck was and locally, that when we announced that we were going to the pad in New Orleans to street race that truck, locally we were laughed at, we were made fun of. You guys will never do anything down there. You're not fast enough, this, that, and the other. And so locally, as we were leaving town, we were being mocked and made fun of. And we were headed to one of the most dangerous places in the United States, New Orleans. And in fact, where that place is, the reason the racing takes place there so openly is because the crime rate is so bad that the officers have more important things to do, murders, stabbings, that
Unfortunately, yeah.
illegal drag racing out in the middle of a street is like, we don't have time for that. So we go down there, and I'm going to tell you, this is in a rough area. And there was a guy on horseback with an AK-47. Listen, I'm not making this up. Tommy will tell you. There was a guy on horseback with an AK-47. There were people setting up hot dog stands in the median. It was the wildest thing I have ever witnessed in my entire life. And I was scared to death, to be honest with you, when I first got there. But it didn't take long for me to realize that we were all there for the same thing. Now, had I walked 6 or 8 blocks one direction and said the wrong thing to somebody, probably going to have trouble. But if you're there for the drag racing, it didn't matter what color you were. It didn't matter where you were from, whether you were Asian, white, black, Indian. It had no difference. If you were there for the racing and you were in that crowd and you were there being respectful to everybody around you, nobody's going to touch you. Nobody's going to touch you.
It's the magic of the drag racing community, because you're right. And that's something that I don't think we talk about enough is
Community.
that, I mean, this group of people is special. I think about, I couldn't take my children to the St. Louis Cardinals game and let them run around. You know what I mean? I couldn't let them run around Busch Stadium, right? I mean, they'd be gone or in a serial killer's van. You know, I mean, you just never know. But you could take your kids to XRP tomorrow night on streetcar night or whatever, grudge night, and let your kids ride around on their bikes or whatever, go talk to friends, go see and if they fell down and scratched their legs, someone's going to help them up. You know what I mean? Someone's going to wipe a tear from their eye. And I just think that's, and you're right. It doesn't matter what race, creed, color you are, what socioeconomic background you're from. This is such a diverse group of people all brought together for a common passion, a love of the sport of drag racing. And it is a really magical thing when you think about it.
And when we went down there for the very first time, the atmosphere was just crazy. It was just insane what I was seeing. And Chris Hamilton was there with his orange Mustang that night. And there were a lot of people that were from Street Outlaws or No Prep Kings. No Prep Kings wasn't even a thing back then, but there were a lot of other people there for that event. And we ended up leaving there. We went clear to the finals at the pad, our first time there in this junky little S10. And we went clear to the finals and runnered up in that deal. And I'll never forget the guy that
Who'd you run in the final?
It was a white Fox body Mustang. The guy's a real estate agent now down in Texas. It had a Pro Charger on it.
I was just curious. Go ahead.
Anyway, but I'll never forget that guy when he came up to pick his lane for the final. It took him 35 minutes to pick his lane. Like, he didn't feel like he had it won. You know what I mean? He was taking it serious. And if you've ever been to the pad, there's a truck stop down at the end of Almanaster where everybody meets up if the cops come. And we all met down there to do the payout, and BJ was there to split the money up and everything. And I'll never forget, that guy came up to me. He's like, man, I'm going to tell you something. That kid's a hoss. At 19 years old, he can do that with that truck and a carburetor on pump E85 and this thing. That truck, it's still rough, but it was really rough back then. I mean, I'll never forget it. He came up and was congratulating us, and it was the most incredible experience I've ever had. And it started out incredibly difficult and scary. Like, it was a mix of emotions of everything that you can imagine. And we raced all night. I remember the sun was coming up, and Billy took a picture laying over the hood of his truck and a money spread out that he won on the hood of the truck. And we were just ready to collapse. We had no hotel room. We had no motorhome. We literally slept in a crew cab, a half-ton Silverado pickup truck. Or I think maybe we might have been in my dually. We just laid the seats back on that trip, but we were exhausted. We stopped in Memphis on the way home and raced some other people there. And
make a little pit stop
yeah,
in
that's the
Memphis,
way to do it.
Tennessee
That's
to
efficient.
knock
Yeah.
off a couple dudes. Oh,
Yeah.
I love it, man. I could talk this. I could do this all day with you, Bill, but
I know.
we better
Gotta
cut
get
you
going.
loose, brother. No, we appreciate it so much. Seriously. Thank you to everybody that's part of the Old Man's Garage community for joining us today. It's been a real fantastic opportunity. I hope you'll subscribe to the Drag Illustrated YouTube channel, join our conversation and the content that we're creating here. And Bill, congratulations, man. Give us the dates, event. So Plates and 28s, October 26th.
25th through the 27th. Kicks off Friday night with a lifted and lowered street meet sponsored by Jack's Wax. We're going to have a 32 car field of burnout contestants. We're going to do them 2 at a time in the burnout box right in front of the stands. The spectators are going to vote on the winner. Open test and tune all night on Friday, and then Saturday's Plates and 28s. It's the heads up event, and we've got some really exciting things that we haven't yet announced. There's possibility of some of the biggest names in drag and drive bringing their big tire drag and drive cars down and doing a shootout.
Oh boy.
Saturday. Yeah.
I like the sound of that, man.
Stay
I
tuned
like
for
the
that.
sound of that.
Steve Morris has been blowing me up.
Oh boy.
Oh
We'll
yeah.
keep this posted because that's another guy that moves the needle, man. Another
Oh.
dude that's really dived into the YouTube deal and done a fantastic job. Like I've learned a lot watching his videos.
He is the same person on camera as he is in person. 100%. One of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Incredible human being, man. Well, Bill,
Yes.
thank you so much for your time. Congrats again, and let's stay in touch, all right? And we look forward
All right,
to
brother.
watching things unfold at Plates and 28s, and we'll talk to you soon, brother. Appreciate
All right,
you.
brother.
Yep. Thanks,
Thank you
Bill.
guys.
Talk soon,
Thank
guys.
you guys.
Hey guys, I want to take a quick second here and remind you all that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is made possible by way of our friends at Redline Synthetic Oils. Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that protect and perform better than any on the market, and they've been doing it since 1976. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about Redline. For more information, log on to redlineoil.com. I want to thank you guys again for being a part of this conversation. It's such an honor, such a privilege to get to talk to these men and women that share my love and passion for the sport of drag racing. We'll see you next week right here on the Drag Illustrated YouTube channel, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time every Wednesday. Thank you guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you at the racetrack.